Greetings viewers, JLB here, back with a brand new installment of Season 2 of Animation Cinema. And today, we're going to be talking about everyone's favorite canine caper straight from 1961, January 25th, 1961 I should say, 101 Dalmatians. Now for those of you who already know the plot of the movie, I'm pretty sure I don't need to explain the story. But for those of you who are new here, I'll go ahead and explain a bit of the story of 101 Dalmatians. It centers around the pet Dalmatians of the Radcliffe family, Roger and Anita. Roger and Anita. You see, the two dogs end up having a litter of 15 puppies, but ultimately, the former classmate of Mrs. Radcliffe, by the name of Cruella de Vil, has her eye on the new arrivals. She's a fashionably despicable Disney villain in every sense of the term. But I'm pretty sure I don't need to go in depth for the entire story, since most of you already know it. But instead of talking about the story, let's discuss how the film was made. Work on 101 Dalmatians started way back in 1956. Back when Dottie Smith wrote the book, and when a year later, Mr. Disney got the rights to it in 1957 after reading it. He assigned one of his animators, Bill Peet, to write the story. Or writer, I should say. My mistake. Anyway, it marked the first time that the story for a Disney animated film was written by one guy. 2 months later, Pete completed the script, and Walt decided to put the script into action, and it was on to working on the feature. But ultimately, there was a bit of a dramatic story going on behind the scenes at the Disney Studios. You see, after the disappointment of Sleeping Beauty in 1959, people were talking about closing down the animation department at the Disney Studio. Mr. Disney told one of his animators, Eric Larson, "I don't think we could continue, it's too expensive." But despite this, he still had deep feelings towards animation because that's what he and his brother Roy built the company on. Now, Walt's old buddy, Ub Iwerks, he was in charge of special processes at the studio, was experimenting with Xerox Photography to aid in animation. What Xerox Photography means is that you can use the Xerox camera to transfer drawings by the animators directly onto the animation cells without having to ink them, which would ultimately save the studio time and money while preserving the spontaneity of the penciled elements. But due to the limitations of the camera, it was unable to deviate from a black scratchy outline, and it lacked the fine lavish quality of hand inking. But Disney was not the first to use the Xerox process. Well, actually they were, my mistake. But 101 Dalmatians wasn't the first time they used it. They first tried Xerox Photography for the Thorn Forest in Sleeping Beauty. And ultimately, the first production to make full use of the process was called Goliath 2. For 101 Dalmatians, one of the benefits of Xerox was that it was a great help towards animating the spotted dogs. And I think it was safe to say that Xerox Photography would stick around for a while, since some films will use Xerox Photography. Films like, not just 101 Dalmatians, but films like The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, The Aristocats, The Jungle Book, and any other film where it looks like there are ink lines outlining the shapes. You could thank 101 Dalmatians for that. But all in all, I'd say 101 Dalmatians is definitely worth it for the family. It's definitely a great family movie. But the legacy of the 101 didn't really stop there. You see, in the years after the original release of the film, Disney decided to make a 1996 live-action remake, which starred Glenn Close as Cruella de Vil. Unlike the original film, the animals didn't talk, like in this one. Ultimately, it was successful enough to lead to a sequel called 102 Dalmatians, which was released on November 22nd, 2000. And of course, after the live-action version of the film, 101 Dalmatians, there was an animated television series that was launched called 101 Dalmatians the Series. But we'll talk about that later down the line. Ultimately, there is also talk of a second TV series with a plot set in the 21st century called 101 Dalmatian Street. I don't really have the specifics on that one, so I'll have to dig up more info if I ever get to that one. Plus, there was actually an animated sequel to this film, 101 Dalmatians 2 Patch's London Adventure. It's the official sequel to the film, and it's a direct-to-video film. And it was released in January of 2003. Plus, on May 28th, 2021, there's actually going to be a live-action spin-off / prequel called Cruella, which, as the title suggests, is a movie that focuses on the main villain of this movie, Cruella de Vil. But when talking about the film as a whole, 101 Dalmatians is definitely worth your time. And with that out of the way, thanks for joining me, and I'll see you all next time. Until then, have a magical day, and stay animated.